The fun part about taping this podcast, guys, on the go at night, is that you're getting ready, you get a show run ready to happen, and then all of a sudden things change. We will give the shout out to our partners a little bit later in this episode, but we got to open talking about the Yankees and the Orioles. Why? What? The Yankees and the Orioles here is the biggest topic of the night. It's because Yankee fan, I saw you going wild on social media. I saw you thinking the season was over, the embarrassment of potentially losing to Baltimore and trailing to my beloved O's by 1 in the ninth. Brett Gardner with the go-ahead hit. The Yankees squeak by Baltimore just barely. You'd heard this maybe potentially on the most recent Levac and Goss show, which, by the way, don't forget to download, subscribe, rate, and review. Levac, hopefully you're studying. When we said it's not a must-win against Baltimore, but a have-to-win with these tough matchups coming up against Boston and Toronto that could potentially figure out what happens in that wild card scenario. You just have to beat Baltimore. And that almost didn't happen tonight. You get the hit that you need from Gardner. The Yankees maybe look back on this game and just say the win's the win, and that's all that matters in the end. But Baltimore pushed New York. That confidence meter that we've talked about all the way from the spring to the summer and now into the fall of the New York Yankee baseball team. This is now playoff week. How many episodes in a row did I tell you that I marked September 24th with those matchups on the way with those teams I just mentioned as truly deciding how this thing was going to shake out and whether or not New York was going to have an opportunity to play for a World Series? We're bumping it up a little bit. Because even though the New York Yankees played against a team that absolutely stinks in Baltimore, terrible. I could do for another half hours telling you how bad Baltimore is. And that game for Yankee fans felt like a playoff game. That Yankee game felt as if New York dropped it, the excitement around a team that was supposed to be a World Series favorite had gone under. If every single night you're living and dying by the pitches of the New York Yankees, that's called playoff baseball. And we're getting it earlier than I predicted. Yankee fan, enjoy it with a question mark, because some nights are going to feel like a stress test more than an exciting baseball. But who would have thought we'd be talking O's Yanks to lead off this gossip and go, oh, remember how we just mentioned about playoffs and how to manage a team and what it means to be in that spot? That's not the New York Mets. And the New York Mets, I'm so excited because the first time ever in my life as a New York sports fan, I get to see the New York Mets in person. I'm going to the game at Citi Field this Friday. Shout out to our friends over at the Integrative Sleep Center in Ballston Spa. Give them a call. Information online at GozillaMedia.com and throughout these podcasts. So our friends at the Integrative Sleep Center, Dr. Fred Dreher Company, Levac and I are hitting Citi Field. Excited to see the Mets play just because it's something I've never done before. But more importantly for Mets fans, it's been a rough season. You were hoping by this point in September with how well the team was playing early on in the year that this matchup against the Philadelphia Phillies and the entire series was going to potentially decide whether or not you're NL East champions. Not the case. And I looked through this Mets season and I kept thinking, if they had DeGrom, if Javier Baez could actually hit, Francisco Lindor is going to be there for a long time. So if Met fan wants to complain about Lindor, you might as well just put the complaint in the old box, right? And just hope somebody picks up the complaint box at whatever business used to have those. Remember those complaint boxes? I thought they were just pieces of gum stuck to paper. Anyways, the Mets season is over, and the tenure of the manager Luis Rojas may already be over. Now, this isn't just a New York biased take that, oh, it's New York, it's the biggest media market, easy things to say is to fire the coach, fire the manager, fire the best player. Like, it's very New York to do those things and just jump to the most extreme headline possible. But Luis Rojas has been a frequent guest on the Carton and Roberts show. Craig Carton and Evan Roberts and WFAN. He's been doing weekly hits for them. The most recent hit could sum up Luis Rojas as a manager in baseball. And if somebody as a Met fan wants to send that right over to Steve Cohen and make the change as soon as possible, they can do that. Rojas said in the interview that he manages a baseball game in September the same way he does in May. Now, maybe he was just trying to be a cliche, one game at a time, do our best, answer his way to just not want to do those interviews. And he got caught thinking he was just giving a cliche answer, and Evan Roberts and Craig Carton pushed him on it. Because if you're a manager in baseball, you should not be managing the game the same way in May as you do in September. You should have in May figured out how to get to that spot. Or if September you're in a playoff race, you're going to push and do everything you can possible to put your team in that spot to win a championship. Rojas was trying to have the attitude of every game matters. We go out and win every single day. But not having the perspective of this here in the final month of the regular season matters more. If you're trying to go 162 and, oh, that sounds great, but that's never going to happen. Not having the perspective of, here's how I'm going to handle my pitcher. Here's how I'm going to handle my lineup. That is manager 101 stuff. Now, if you don't want to tell Craig Carton or Evan Roberts how you're going to manage and tell them, guys, I'm not going to tell you how you're going to handle these situations. I'm not going to go out and tell you how I'm going to handle my pitchers because that's bad strategy. Say that as an answer. Go ahead and say that. But to have the answer of, I'm going to manage the same way I do in May and September is the wrong answer. It is the wrong take. So if Steve Cohen had an exit interview with Luis Rojas and said, all right, Skip, here's a scenario. How would you handle it? My God, isn't that in the movie like Rookie of the Year? Does anybody remember that movie? Rookie of the Year. There's another one that's just like that too, where the kid buys the baseball team. It's like the mix between the Cubs movie and the Twins movie. It's not in that movie, right? They quiz the kid. It's Little Big League. Little Big League's the movie where they quiz the kid because he got that team from his grandpa and all that stuff. Luis Rojas would fail. That child in that movie, Little Big League, would get the team to manage and play for him more than Luis Rojas. Mets fans, if you want to change, if you want to go to my pal Levac said Carlos Beltran, great. You want to bring in the hottest name as a manager, wonderful. Steve Cohen's going to be aggressive and say, Rojas, you're not the guy. Thanks, but no thanks. The DeGrom thing can only hold so much water. It's time for a change. I think Luis Rojas summed that up this week with that horrendous answer on New York radio. An oldie but a goodie. Some of you remember this from Capital Region Sports Talk Radio. Others may be hearing this for the first time, and it needs to be brought back one more time. Major League Baseball needs to eliminate the one-game wild card game. It's done. It's over. Stop. It is hurting the sport to have this one-game play-in game. If you don't remember the history of it, it goes back to the fall of 2011 where it had that unbelievable finish to the season. The Red Sox and the Rays and the Orioles and the battles and the home runs. It felt like that thing you always hope for, like March Madness having multiple buzzer beaters, the witching hour in the NFL. Baseball got that on their final playoff day. And because of that, they thought, could you imagine if we get this every single time, or even better? What if we just made all of those games that mattered and people cared about and guarantee it always happens on a Tuesday and Wednesday night with the one-game wild card? The problem is, in 10 years into this, it has never lived up to what the end of the 2011 season is. Now, baseball is going to look back and say, hey, here's what we get. We get the night to be about us. Tuesday and Wednesday night, we're avoiding NFL and college football coverage. The talking point for the national media is going to be how great a pitcher or a home run or a market played to advance their chances to win a World Series. And maybe that alone is all baseball wants. It makes the TV partners happy because it pops a rating. It makes the radio partners happy because people like listening to baseball on the radio and they get to put that on a national audience. They don't get the game blacked out in most cases. So you get those two media companies happy. You get your sponsors happy because every pitch and every inning, a sponsor who bought that airtime gets to be a part of it. So maybe that's the answer alone. Money drives everything. But from a pure baseball standpoint, when you talk about crowning the best team in the sport that year, just a few seasons ago, Milwaukee and Chicago were battling for the top spot in the National League. But both teams were in the National League Central. Sure enough, the Cubs got beat, the Cubs got knocked out, and the best team, arguably in the National League that season, did not advance even to the NLDS because the Brewers and Cubs were in the same division. The Cubs ended up playing the wild card, and that was it. Now, that same thing is going to likely happen in this year's wild card game. as the San Francisco Giants have been the biggest surprise of any baseball team close to a past decade, going off at 40-1 preseason to win a 5-team division. Yet San Francisco has clinched a playoff berth. And that means the Los Angeles Dodgers could be a 100-win baseball team. And their season could end in one game. If you're the Dodgers, you're going to throw out Max Scherzer. Clayton Kershaw is no longer the best arm on that team. So you're going to toss Scherzer in a game that's meaningless. When instead, the Dodgers, who are going to have the second best record in the National League, could have got the 2-3 matchup and played somebody who's not as good as them and advanced to the NLCS. And we would have got Giants-Dodgers. Best teams in the National League fighting it out for a World Series. Instead, LA could get knocked out by one of these teams battling it out for the final spot. Whether that ends up being the Reds, the Cardinals, the Padres, still remains to be seen. How is this good for baseball? That we might not see multiple times of Max Scherzer or Los Angeles or the best teams bat? Because what? You want to post a big rating on a Tuesday night? Because you hope your best team gets knocked out after one game, even though after 162 they proved to be the second best team in the entire league? One and dones can be exciting in sports. Football has it in their playoffs, but those teams who were great get rewarded with a bye. Teams in basketball, the 5 to 7 game series. But March Madness, the biggest critique is that you play the entire regular season and it's watered down because of what happens come March. It's entertaining, but at least sometimes they get an advantage of having the games close to their homes and the pod systems and everything else. Baseball. It's not worth it anymore to get your best teams knocked out on one game in October for your TV, radio, and sponsorships. Let it expand. And that's if you want to do anything. Dump the wild card and put another team in. You want to go 6-6? Great. Did people complain about the 18 playoffs last season? I thought it was fine. Expand. Either expand or go back to 4-4. The one-game wild card needs to end for the sake of the popularity of the best teams in baseball and to give that sport the best product come October. I've been waiting years for this game, and that is Syracuse football to take on UAlbany football. Two programs that I've followed, that I know the players of, that I've been able to either attend games as a fan, a media member, an on-field host. When that all happens and comes together, it's a really exciting time to see what goes on in the Carrier Dome this Saturday noon kickoff. I'm going as a fan. I can't wait to tailgate or some variation of that. Even some of these rules I'm getting used to, finding out exactly how the tailgate's going to come together, what happens with the policies inside the Carrier Dome and all that stuff. But I will be there as a fan. Leave me a message on social media. Maybe we'll say what's up, walk into the Carrier Dome if you're heading there. Whether you're wearing your purple and gold or your Syracuse blue and orange, it should be a lot of fun to see these teams battle it out. Now, for those who have been watching the media side of this, Coach Dino Babers had said, and even my pal Mike Acchione, the most recent guest on Getting There with Goz, had mentioned that for a team from the FCS level like UAlbany, playing against the Orange is like their Super Bowl. It's their biggest game of the year. And Coach Gattuso did not like those comments. He mentioned it to Mark Singlace, the beat reporter for the Great Danes, that he was being sarcastic, that this is not their Super Bowl. And to Coach Gattuso's credit, I get why he uses this as the old classic bulletin board material. Because UAlbany football expects more from the program. That's been the biggest change for UAlbany football over the last decade. This is not the same Great Danes team that was under Coach Bob Ford and played in the NEC. This is a CAA Great Dane program, an expanded stadium. For those who aren't familiar with the CAA, the best comparison I can give is the SEC of the FCS. The best conference in that level of football. A college football playoff team in 2019 for UAlbany. A team that's faced off against Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. A team that just went on the road and played in the Dome against North Dakota State, a spot that's hosted College Game Day. A team that beat Buffalo just a few seasons ago on an ESPN telecast. So when you tell UAlbany that this is your Super Bowl and you're playing a Syracuse team that struggles to make bowl games, you see why it pisses players off and why it's going to be motivation for this week. Syracuse has had its struggles in the past with FCS teams, as noted, with Villanova needing a double overtime victory back in 2014 and a walk-on wide receiver in 2011 to beat Rhode Island. With all those things being said, what are the keys for this game? Can Jeff Undercuffler and their offensive coordinator, a former college quarterback in his own right, Joe Davis, trick fool the young Syracuse secondary. Deuce Chestnut might be the best athlete back there, but is he going to bite? Is he going to be too aggressive? Are these young players thinking that they're just rocking the Syracuse uniforms and they can out-athlete these guys and they're going to just, UAlbany I'm talking now, pick and prod and take advantage of those spots? That's my most intriguing matchup of how UAlbany handles that young secondary. Can Sean Tucker bull his way up and down? The biggest difference between FBS and FCS, it's the guys up front, the defensive tackles, the offensive linemen. You might just be flat out bigger up front. Is that Syracuse's strategy? Can Tommy DeVito and Garrett Schrader figure out who in the world's actually quarterbacking this game against the Great Danes? You're playing against Jeff Undercuffler, who led the FCS as a freshman in passing touchdowns in 2019. You've got a preseason All-American in Carl Mofor in the backfield. You've got young Alexander, as I like to call him, the young Alexander, Roy Alexander on the outside, who's become a breakout player as a freshman for this team. UAlbany's going to come out, and they're going to feel fired up. If Syracuse keeps it close, and I'm talking about letting the Great Danes hang around between 7 and 14 points into the third, it might be bad news for Syracuse. I have the Orange winning this game 35-14. Sean Tucker's the difference. The defense is the difference. The offensive line is the difference. But if UAlbany wants to pull the upset, it's about how great Jeff Undercuffler can be in that pocket. Can the offensive line give that team protection? And can the offensive coordinator, Joe Davis, and Coach Greg Cattuso dial some things up that has Syracuse blow their coverages, the old MEs? I like the Orange, but don't take these Great Danes for granted. We'll get back to this Gozilla Media podcast in a few moments, but before we do, we want to give love to our sponsors and the people that make Gozilla Media podcasts possible. And that's our friends over at Johnstone Supply in Troy. Fall is here, and that means changes are coming to your home. Does your furnace need a new control board or a blower motor? Are you looking for an upgrade for your heating system right now to that energy-efficient system? Johnstone Supply in Troy has that for you. We're talking about a family-owned and operated business for decades here in the capital region. They've been helping people get back to normal, and now they can do the same for you, especially this fall, helping out, making sure that your house is heated properly for that colder weather on the way. Johnstone Supply in Troy. You can visit them on 6th Avenue for the right information on how you can change how your house is set up this fall. Whether it's finding that right filter or the nozzle, the upgrade to the furnace or more, make sure it's taken care of and you do it efficiently this fall. Stop in and say hello to my guy George or Tom, Cap, James, whoever might be there. The staff is looking forward to seeing you visit. And if you say Gozilla Media, they'll know who you're talking about. Those guys are nice enough to hang up our signs in the store and to make sure they continue to support local causes like us. We love to support them. It's Johnstone Supply in Troy. Stop in this fall to make sure your home is heated properly. Or give them a call today, 518-272-5922. 518-272-5922. Check them out on Facebook as well. Johnstone Supply in Troy. And our friends over at Mohawk Honda. I love my Pilot. You hear all about it here in the capital region. The best vehicle I've ever owned. It happened because of the great people at Mohawk Honda. Stopped in, worked with them, and sure enough, I'm driving off the lot with the best ride I've had. The great features, the easy transition with the baby room and more. The car seat fits perfectly. I don't have to worry about jamming stuff in. I've got the room in my Pilot. And now you can do the same for yourself because the current supply and demand within the auto industry is so tough for so many places, but luckily, you know about Mohawk Honda. And you can take advantage of the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash offer. Putting cash in your hand for your vehicle the same day you come in. That's a pretty amazing deal. Mohawk Honda consistently keeps their lots stocked with hundreds of pre-owned vehicles. The large inventory makes it worth the drive to Glenville, New York, Freeman's Bridge Road. Stop in wherever you're listening here in upstate New York. Take the ride to Mohawk Honda. So many people just need to have people they trust when they go through the car buying experience. The Harridan families continue to be that here in the capital region. And if you're looking for a vehicle, it's worth the drive wherever you're listening to Freeman's Bridge Road in Glenville, New York. Stop in, and when you walk in, say you're looking for Greg Johnson. Greg, hey, the guy Goz talks about on the podcast and Gozilla Media, yes. The assistant GM, Jake, asked for a hot sauce Doyle. The VIP man, Morales, and all the helpful sales consultants at Mohawk Honda. The selection of vehicles pre-owned and taking advantage of the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash offer can happen for you today. Mohawk Honda in Glenville, where they always go out of their way to please you. Now back to this Gozilla Media podcast. The New York Giants take on the Washington football team to kick off week 2. Actually, there you go, New York fans. We had a New York team to start off the week, and I will say it one more time until I'm proven wrong. This might be a theme of this. Daniel Jones is god-awful. He is terrible. I really don't rip into players that much. Like, I don't call for jobs and firings and suck and have the overreact. He is the worst quarterback in the NFL. And it's not even significantly close. Daniel Jones led the NFL in fumbles in 2019. He then led the NFL in fumbles in 2020. He's got 40 turnovers in 28 games. The only quarterback ever to do that was Mark Bulger. Remember Mark Bulger, the big bulge, St. Louis Ram quarterback? But Bulger was slinging the ball around like it was arena football. He was slinging around like he had touchdown Eddie Brown as a wide receiver. Bulger would do whatever he wanted. He would show up late 90 minutes to a concert like the Foo Fighters. That's what Mark Bulger would do. That's why he used to turn over the football so much. Daniel Jones just isn't good. When Daniel Jones was at Duke, he never was an all-ACC selection the entire time he was there. That means coaches and media members consider Daniel Jones anywhere between the 5th and maybe 8th best quarterback in the ACC. Yet he was the 2nd best quarterback prospect in the country and got drafted behind Kyler Murray in that year's NFL draft. It never made sense. It still doesn't. Daniel Jones is 8-19 as a starter. He's led the NFL in turnovers back-to-back seasons. Oh, and 8 of those 19 wins are against the Washington franchise they play Thursday night. So what could happen is Jones wins the game, the Giants get a divisional game on short rest, and everyone says, wow, look at Daniel Jones, how well he played, he bounced back. Guys, he only plays good against Washington. He only wins against Washington. What a remarkable stat that over 50% of your victories in 3 seasons of the NFL came against one team. He is so awful that it has to be the end. I get there's 16 games left in this season, but it never was the right pick to begin with. The problem is, I don't even think Dave Gettleman's that bad of a GM. Now that he's actually let some of his players come in, the offensive line was horrendous years ago. Better. The defense couldn't pressure anybody. They had bad contracts. Improved. The wide receiving core would have been just focused on Odell Beckham Jr., and Odell doesn't play for the Browns. So we can't even go back and forth of whether or not it was a good trade for both teams because Cleveland wins with Odell Beckham Jr., even standing on the sidelines. The Giants haven't gotten back to the playoffs. But Daniel Jones is the issue. We can't keep doing this every year that, well, Daniel Jones played well, but, well, Daniel Jones would have had a better opportunity, but it's Jason Garrett's fault. It's the offensive line's fault to play. Eventually, you just got to say he's not the guy. Credit to the NFL GMs and managers and fans and scouts and everything else that when I was growing up, the word bust, it would happen fast. That would have happened and you were done. Not fast as if they didn't give you enough opportunities. You can go back and look at some first-round quarterbacks and argue they actually got far less opportunities. You know, fat guy like Jamarcus Russell and other players, Ryan Leaf, they were just bad and done. Johnny Manziel, just done. Some reason, some quarterbacks who struggled in that first round get other opportunities again. Daniel Jones should not be one of them. Giant fan, you need a big performance out of Daniel Jones on Thursday night, and you need a big, beyond average performance by Daniel Jones for the rest of the season if you even consider this guy to be the quarterback for your franchise's future. All right, let's talk about what we're getting into for the weekend. Here are the weekend plans. Friday, I'm going to the Mets game. Going to be awesome. Saturday, going to UAlbany Syracuse. Going to be a great time. Sunday, we are broadcasting live from the Hideaway, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. Come join us, the Hideaway at the Saratoga Lake Golf Club. Watch the broadcast. If you're out of town, check it out on the Hideaway's Facebook. The best Bloody Mary that you can find. Plus, we give you those late-second NFL updates, whether you're betting on the games, your fantasy football adjustments. Watch it on the Hideaway's Facebook page as long as Gozilla Media. That's happening on Sunday. Also, you know what? I want to add one other thing, too. Go back and watch NXT and go back and watch the show called Dark Side of the Ring. Dark Side of the Ring, Part 2 of Season 3 debuts. I say this a bunch about that show. If you're not a wrestling fan, that show is just a drama. They have a new episode coming out called The Plane Ride from Hell. Oh, man. That's going to be insane. Go back and watch that on demand this weekend if you get some free time. Now, on to the picks. Let's start with college. I got 6 games I wrote down. You know what? I'm scratching the 6th one. I'm going to scratch the 6th one. I already know that's going to be the one that everyone hits me up about. Like, what was that 6th game you were going to pick, Goz? And I'm probably going to claim it's the one I got right. But I'm going to go with 5 now. 5 games, I'm going to go from 5-1 for the games that I like this week in college. Bear Felica has talked me in to Boise State. I always bet against Boise State. I bet against Boise because a lot of people just know the name and they don't follow a lot of West Coast football. So because of that, the lines are usually not matching what they should for Boise State football. But they get Oklahoma State, who, what the hell happened to the Cowboys? Weren't they supposed to be a team that year in and year out was competing for a national championship? They never recovered from that Des Bryant upset loss weekday against Iowa State that year with Brandon Whedon, who was like 30 playing quarterback. They should have played for the national championship. Anyways, Oklahoma State can't figure it out. Boise's given 4.5 at home. Why can't that be 7? Why can't that be a touchdown out victory? 9 o'clock, Fox Sports, Blue Turf, Boise. Michigan State getting points against Miami. It goes to the theme of the week. I call it the Prove It week this week. Prove It starts here with Kenneth Walker III. If Kenneth Walker III has a big game against Miami, and I'm talking like $150 and 2 touchdowns, if he's a dominant force, Kenneth Walker III will be in the conversation, if not the best running back in college football. How do you prove you're the best running back in college football? How do you claim that you're the Doak Walker Award winner? Is games like this against national programs. We'll find out how good he is. The Spartans are the dogs against Miami. Miami sucked against Alabama. They look terrible against Appalachian State. Michigan State with the points. Not saying the Spartans are going to win, but they're going to keep that within 6.5. This game at one point was my number 1 favorite game, and the line is moving too fast for me. Now I'm getting scared. And that's Alabama and Florida. I loved the over at 55.5, 56.5, 57.5. Now it's up to 59.5. Alabama's a 14.5 point favorite in this game. Alabama, Nick Saban, Bryce Young, blah, 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 blah. They're dominant. They beat everybody. We get it. If you're going to bet against Alabama, you would think it would be against Anthony Richardson. Here's how I'll sum up Anthony Richardson. There has been no player more exciting to watch in college football the first few weeks of the season than 15 for Florida. Notice how I called him 15. He is a freshman quarterback wearing number 15 at Florida. Do you know how good you have to be wearing Tim Tebow's number that early in your career? As good as Richardson's been, as exciting as he's been, the numbers are unreal. It's like a video game high school dominant stuff he's putting up. Do I really think a freshman quarterback is going to light up Alabama and Nick Saban's defense? Do I really think a freshman can walk on to the field and say, I'm this good. Watch what I'm about to do to Bama in September. Because of that, I can't take the over anymore. You know what? I lied. Yes, I will. I'm still taking it. I swear to God, though, if I lose this game 38-21 and I lose on that hook, oh, God, I can just feel that coming. Look at the 63. All right, you just heard me talk myself into it. Alabama, Florida, over 59.5. Talking about proving it, my number 2 game I love the most this week, Tulane versus Ole Miss. Matt Corral's the quarterback for Ole Miss, 5-star prospect out of Long Beach Poly. That's the quarterback to me who's looked the best. He zings it. Man, you're talking about the guy who throws the best ball in college football. His wide receivers don't have to be DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown anymore and Elijah Moore. Corral's the best quarterback right now who's impressed me the most. That number gets to 13.5, wonderful. 14, fine. 14.5 is where it's at most people. Ole Miss will get to 20. And what I like about this game the most is how high the over-under is getting. I see it as high as 75.5. So if I'm going to get into a shootout in college football, I'd like to have the best quarterback on my team in that shootout. So because that number is so high for so many points, it might be the Corral's big game before he gets Bama in early October. I'll take the best quarterback right now who I feel in the country. Him and Richardson are battling for the best quarterback in the country. Give me Ole Miss, 14 over Tulane. In my favorite play of the week, oh, my pal Bryce Zelinsky over at Sports the Zenity. Oh, my pal Brian Cadia from White Heat in the space between your ears are laughing at this because Brian started hitting me up on Twitter about this game. It's all about Penn State. I can't stand Penn State as a football program. I despise them. The whole thing of, I don't even want to bring it up, but you know what it's about. Clifford's a good quarterback. I have my notes in my phone here, watching a whole day of college football out in the Verona area. I just wrote down numbers like 5 for Penn State's really good. Linebacker for Penn State, really good. Clifford throws a better ball. Ball State, good team. Didn't matter. All these random notes where I was filled with alcohol just kept saying how good Penn State was. And to see that number 6.5 against Auburn with Bo Nix on the road, yeah, I'll take the Nittany Lions. I would even push that to 13.5 if I could to get real tricky. See how much I think Penn State, and you've heard this before, I don't like betting game day games. I feel like the crowd is too hard to figure out. I feel like the rivalry games are too tough. I don't like betting the game day games. I can't factor in how much of an impact that has on teams. It doesn't matter. Give me the Penn State Nittany Lions, my favorite play of the week against the Auburn Tigers. College game day, whiteout. We'll see what happens. Now for the NFL picks. Oh, God, I've been going back and forth these NFL ones. I feel like I'm going to change it. I would love doing that. I love changing it, talking about it on a Wednesday night, thinking I'm going to change it before Sunday. Again, listen to the Hideaway Show before I change my picks. I got New Orleans and Carolina at over 44.5. Joe Brady, Matt Rule. I feel like it's such a sucker bet, though, at 44.5 with Winston throwing 5 touchdowns. But because of that, I'm rolling with the over. 44.5, Carolina, New Orleans. There's just so many games there. I didn't mention the Bills. That 3.5 is weird against Miami. I don't want to touch that. My dad and I had this theory, and I'll give him more credit than I'll take on this, that the team that covered on Monday Night Football usually does not cover consistently in the following week. Las Vegas was the team that covered and won against that Baltimore Raven team. I'll take Pittsburgh because of that stat I like to play with all the time. And after that, God, I want to bet against my Bucks. 12.5, 13 points in a divisional game. I know that Tampa's got a few more days off, but Matt Ryan's known that Buccaneer defense. And boy, I know they looked terrible week 1. Those would be my 3 plays. Saints, Panthers over. Falcons with the points against my beloved Buccaneers, and Steelers -5.5 against the Raiders. You can tell my confidence level in my NFL picks this week is far less my college picks, but that's what I'm going to roll with. We're still sitting above 500 for the college picks. 5-3, the NFL picks, 2-2. All right, that's this week's Goz on the Go. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you win some cash on those picks this week. Hopefully confidence will be higher next week on some of these. Take the college picks. Catch you next week.